The rain hammered against the floor-to-ceiling windows of Henderson Associates as Marcus Chen sat across from CEO Richard Henderson, his worn leather portfolio trembling slightly in his calloused hands. The weight of 3 months without steady work pressed against his chest like a stone, each unpaid bill at home a reminder of how desperately he needed this job. His daughter Emma's school shoes had holes that he patched with duct tape, and the electricity bill notice glowed red in his mind like a neon sign of failure. Marcus had spent his last $20 on dry cleaning his only interview suit, the fabric still carrying the faint chemical smell that made him self-conscious. But nothing could mask the reality written across his copyright copyright a patchwork of part-time jobs, night shifts, and employment gaps that told the story of a man who'd chosen his daughter over his career advancement time and again. Henderson leaned back in his mahogany chair, scanning the single page with barely concealed amusement. His corner office screamed success awards lining the walls, a view of the city skyline, and the kind of polished marble desk that cost more than Marcus made in 6 months at his last job. "Let me get this straight, Mr. Chen," Henderson began, his voice dripping with condescension as he adjusted his $1,000 glasses. "You've been out of corporate finance for, what is it now? 4 years, and your most recent experience is stocking shelves at a grocery store and delivering pizza?" Marcus felt heat creep up his neck, but he kept his voice steady. "Sir, I've been raising my daughter alone since my wife passed. I took jobs that allowed me to be the fahira to pick her up from school, help with homework, take her to doctor appointments. But I've kept up with industry changes through online courses and Henderson's laugh cut through the air like a blade, sharp and dismissive. "Online courses?" He shook his head, sharing a knowing look with his assistant who stood nearby with a tablet. "Mr. Chen, this is Henderson Associates. We handle multi-million-dollar portfolios. Our clients don't care about your sob story or your online certificates. They want results from people who've been in the game, not someone who's been playing house for 4 years." The words hit Marcus like physical blows, each one confirming his worst fears about how the world saw him. He thought of Emma, probably finishing her math homework at the after-school program right now, her small face lighting up whenever he picked her up. She never complained about their cramped apartment or the generic cereal they ate for dinner. She just wrapped her arms around his neck and told him about her day as if he'd given her the world. "I understand your concerns, Mr. Henderson," Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper but steady with quiet determination. "But I've never missed a deadline in my life. I've managed household budgets that would make some CFOs sweat, and I've learned to solve problems with creativity because I couldn't always solve them with money. I may not have the traditional path, Buter, but nothing," Henderson interrupted, sliding the copyright copyright across the polished surface like it was contaminated. "Mr. Chen, I'm going to be honest with you because I believe in straight talk. This company needs sharks, not goldfish. We need people who put the firm first, who'll work weekends, who understand that success requires sacrifice. You've already proven that you'll choose family over career advancement. What happens when we need you to close a deal on your daughter's birthday? When a client emergency conflicts with a school play?" Marcus felt something crack inside his chest. Not from anger but from the weight of recognition. This man wasn't entirely wrong. Marcus would choose Emma every single time. But that didn't make him less capable or less dedicated. It made him human. "You're right," Marcus said quietly, surprising Henderson. "I would choose my daughter over a meeting. I'd leave work to take her to the hospital. I'd miss networking events for parent-teacher conferences. But that same love that makes me prioritize her also makes me work harder than anyone else in the room when I am here. Because I'm not just working for a paycheck, I'm working for her future." Henderson was already shaking his head, ready to dismiss him, when the office door burst open with the force of a small hurricane. Daddy, Emma Chen, all 7 years of her, stood in the doorway with her backpack sliding off one shoulder and her shoes conspicuously absent. Her feet were bare, pale against the dark carpet, and her school uniform was rumpled from the day. But her smile could have powered the entire building. Emma. Marcus shot to his feet, embarrassment and panic flooding his system. Sweetheart, what are you doing here? Where are your shoes? The little girl padded across the expensive carpet, her feet making small slapping sounds that seemed to echo in the suddenly silent office. The mean lady at the front desk said I couldn't come up, but I told her my daddy was here and it was an emergency. She threw her arms around Marcus's legs, looking up at him with eyes that mirrored his own. I lost my shoes at recess, and Billy Morrison said his daddy could buy him new ones right now, but you couldn't because we're poor. So I told him my daddy was getting a job today and he'd buy me the prettiest shoes in the whole world. Marcus felt his face burn with humiliation as Henderson stared at the scene unfolding before him. This was a dire. Any remote chance he had was gone now. His daughter's honesty and his obvious poverty were laid bare in this temple of wealth and success. Emma, honey, we need to go, Marcus whispered, gently trying to extract himself from her embrace. I'm sorry, Mr. Henderson. She goes to the school down the street and sometime sir. Wait, Henderson said, his voice strangely quiet. He was staring at Emma with an expression Marcus couldn't read. Did you say Billy Morrison? Emma nodded enthusiastically, apparently immune to the tension in the room. Yeah, his daddy works in a big building like this one. Billy says his daddy's never home for dinner because work is more important than family. She looked up at Marcus with pure adoration. But my daddy makes me pancakes every morning and reads me stories every night, even when he's really tired from work. Henderson's face had gone pale. William Morrison, that's my business partner's son. Goes to Westfield Elementary? That's my school. Emma beamed. Do you know Billy? He's not very nice sometimes, but Daddy says that's because he's sad that his daddy doesn't come to school things. The office fell silent except for the continued drumming of rain against the windows. Henderson stared at Emma, then at Marcus, then back at Emma. Marcus could practically see the wheels turning in the older man's head, could sense the shift happening but didn't dare believe it. Mr. Chen, Henderson said slowly, William Morrison Jr. is indeed my business partner. And his son, Billy, is Emma's classmate. Yes, sir, Marcus replied, not sure where this was leading but knowing it couldn't be anywhere good. Henderson stood up and walked around his desk, stopping just in front of Emma. To Marcus's surprise, he crouched down to her level. Emma, can I ask you something? What does your daddy do when you're scared at night? He sits with me until I'm not scared anymore, she said simply. And he checks for monsters even when he's sleepy. And when I had bad dreams about mommy, he let me sleep in his bed for a whole week. And when you're sick, he makes me soup and reads extra stories and takes time off work to take care of me. He says I'm the most important thing in the whole world. She paused, studying Henderson's face with the brutal honesty of childhood. Are you sad? You look like Billy's daddy when he comes to school. He always looks like he forgot how to smile. Henderson's composure cracked. Marcus watched in amazement as this man who had just humiliated him struggled with emotions that seemed to take him by surprise. I have a daughter too, Henderson said quietly. She's about your age. But I haven't read her a bedtime story in I can't remember how long. Emma's face lit up with the solution-focused optimism of a 7-year-old. You should read to her tonight. My daddy says stories make everything better, even the scary parts of life. Henderson straightened slowly, his gaze moving between Emma and Marcus. When he spoke, his voice was different, smaller somehow, more human. Mr. Chen, I owe you an apology. I've been so focused on what I thought strength looked like in business that I forgot what it actually looks like in life." He gestured to Emma, who was now exploring his office with the casual curiosity of childhood. "Your daughter just taught me something I'd forgotten, that the most successful man in the room isn't always the one with the most impressive copyright. Sometimes it's the one who raised a child who feels safe enough to speak her truth to strangers." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Mr. Henderson, yeah, let me finish," Henderson continued, his voice gaining strength. "I've spent the last 15 years building this company, working 70-hour weeks, missing birthdays and school plays and bedtime stories. I told myself it was for my family, but looking at Emma, seeing how she looks at you, I realize what I've actually been doing is teaching my daughter that work matters more than she does." He walked back to his desk and picked up Marcus's copyright, but this time he looked at it differently. 4 years out of corporate finance. But 4 years of being a full-time father. Night shifts and part-time work that allowed you to be the for school pickup. Online courses taken after bedtime to keep your skills sharp. He looked up at Marcus with something that might have been respect. "Mr. Chen, you didn't leave the workforce. You just redefined what success looks like." Emma had found Henderson's family photo on a side table and was studying it with intense concentration. "Is this your little girl? She looks sad too." Henderson's breath caught. "Her name is Sarah. She's 8. You should bring her to work someday. My daddy used to bring me to his old job sometimes, and everyone loved me because I made them smile." Emma set the photo down carefully and looked at Henderson with the wisdom that sometimes emerges from young souls. Maybe she just wants to see where her daddy goes all day. The transformation in Henderson's face was remarkable to witness. Marcus saw the exact moment when the CEO stopped seeing Emma as an interruption and started seeing her as a teacher. "Mr. Chen," Henderson said, turning back to Marcus with decision crystallizing in his voice, "I'd like to offer you a position here. Not despite your unconventional path, but because of it. We need someone who understands that real success isn't just about profit margins, it's about building something worth passing on to the next generation." Marcus felt his knees go weak. "Sir, are you serious?" "Dead serious. Starting salary is 85,000, full benefits, and—" Henderson paused, looking at Emma, who was now sitting in his chair spinning slowly. "Flexible schedule for school events and family obligations. Because it turns out my business partner and I have been learning all the wrong lessons about leadership." Emma stopped spinning and looked at both men with satisfaction. "Does this mean Daddy got the job and I can get new shoes?" Both men laughed, the tension that had filled the room dissolving into something warmer, more human. "Yes, sweetheart," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion as he lifted her from the chair. "Daddy got the job, and we'll get you the prettiest shoes in the whole world." "But not too pretty," Emma said seriously, wrapping her arms around his neck. "I still want to be able to run fast at recess." Henderson watched this exchange with something that looked like hunger, a man recognizing what he'd been starving for without even knowing it. "Mr. Chen," he said as father and daughter prepared to leave, "would you and Emma like to have dinner with my family this weekend? I think Sarah and Emma would get along well, and I could use some advice on how to be the kind of father my daughter deserves." Marcus looked down at Emma, who was nodding enthusiastically, and then back at Henderson. 6 months ago, he'd been a man defined by his losses, his wife, his career, his confidence. Today, walking out of this office with his daughter's hand in his and hope blooming in his chest, he understood that sometimes the very things the world tells you are weaknesses turn out to be your greatest strengths. "We'd love that, Mr. Henderson," Marcus said. "We'd love that very much." As they walked toward the elevator, Emma skipping beside him in her bare feet. Marcus heard Henderson on the phone behind them. "Sarah, it's Daddy. I was wondering. Would you like me to read you a story tonight?" Some victories, Marcus realized, change more than just your own life. Sometimes they change the definition of success itself.